So our first speaker is Jacqueline Farrell. Please welcome.
Last year, my friend posted a feminist statement on Facebook. What came next was a war of words between my all-girls school and our all-boys brother school. Cries of, not all men, rape culture doesn't exist, and you're lucky you aren't living in a country where you can be stoned. While my friends tried to illustrate how they experience rape culture every day, or the importance of privileged women using their voices for those who can't, the boys were able to dismiss all this with a single word: feminazi. Just another way that women are silenced by society's subconscious bias. Here, on this stage, I stand behind a barrier that exists because of my gender. I'm not talking about the wage gap, affirmative action, access to education, or anything as tangible. Instead, the obstacle is the subconscious bias that impacts every person in this room, even though you aren't aware of it. The things that make me a woman are making you doubt my speech. The inherent bias means that even the pitch of my voice impacts my ability to persuade you. When I was in Year 9, an adjudicator told me that I didn't win my public speaking competition because my voice was annoyingly high. Throughout high school, debating adjudicators have told me to be firmer and more assertive, like the boys' teams I was facing. Every time I speak in public, my gender is heard before my words. We all know there are three main aspects of communication: body language, vocal tone, and content. And in all three, women are disadvantaged. We teach our boys how to dominate, but from a young age, our girls are taught to make themselves small, to take up less space, not to speak over others, and that they will never be better qualified than those around them. The first issue. Our gendered body language is taught subtly and absorbed young. We tell our children that how they move, sit, and act says a lot about who they are. We teach our boys to make themselves big, confident, and assertive, to show power and competence. We tell our girls, less is more. Society has visualized gender stereotypes that make massive statements about dominance. Take manspreading, where men feel free to spread themselves out on public transport while others remain standing or pushed to the side. A non-verbal domination that men are blind to. We are taught to step out of the way of men walking down the street, to make ourselves thinner and smaller, while boys are encouraged to stand their ground, to be tall and dominating. And this means when it comes to existing in a professional environment, the way our women use their bodies makes them appear less confident, capable, and competitive. Boys are taught how to command a room's attention. Women are taught how to hide from it. The second area is vocal tone. In group settings, men will dominate 75% of the conversation, and when a woman does speak up, she is likely to be interrupted or spoken over. Studies show that the female voice is harder for men to register. Can you believe that? Social conditioning has literally muted the voice of an entire gender. An MIT study found that using an identical script for a video pitch, one with a female voiceover and the other with a male, the male voice would get 40% more funding. Deeper voices get the votes. Their words are trustworthier, are easier to remember. Too often our female politicians are described as bossy and whiny. We all know that the true voice of leadership is thicker vocal cords. Instead, their media advisors tell them to lower their voices. Perhaps I should do the same. And thirdly, the biggest danger is that women are not seen as qualified to speak on the same content as men can. Mansplaining is rampant. Mansplaining doesn't mean explaining done by a man. It's when a man speaks over the voices of women to explain a concept, assuming he's the expert by default. We've We've all seen this. Mansplaining is Piers Morgan interrupting a segment on the Women's Day March to describe it as a mass hissy fit. It's Twitter users explaining physics to a female astronaut or summarising articles for the women who wrote them. It's every time the phrase, "the men are talking," is used ironically or otherwise. And it comes from teaching our children that before a woman may speak on a topic, she must be the absolute expert in the field, while men are free to comment and criticise whatever they like. That men are inherently better qualified. How many female sports commentators can you name? Why are there fewer female CEOs in Australia than there are CEOs named John? Why are men entitled to an intellectual space that women aren't? Because even by men who consider themselves allies, our women are still silenced by opinions that are founded on sexist bias. Ever had a man tell you to calm down and take a joke? Act as if you're hysterical or unreasonable when you tell him that something was offensive, or get upset when you say that something he said was sexist. Women shouldn't talk to strange men. But don't ignore men trying to have a conversation with you. Can't a man have a conversation with a woman these days without being accused of being a rapist? What do you mean you let him walk you home? Don't you know how dangerous that can be? Why can't I walk you home? How dare you make me feel as if I'm a threat to you? Because ultimately, we're teaching our boys to carve out their own space, but we're failing to teach our girls the same. We're failing to give our women a voice, failing to prepare them to succeed. Women are less likely in a professional world to self-advocate, to focus on their successes in the same way men are. Girls are growing up nice in a world where nice guys finish last. An HP report found that men will apply for a job when they meet 60% of the qualifications. Women will apply when they meet 100%. Men get pay rises because they ask for them, while women will wait until someone else tells them they deserve it. Teachers tell the same story. Boys will send in paragraphs of work, half an essay, while girls will wait until the work is perfect, edited and completed before submitting. Girls, smile pretty, play it safe, perfect or nothing, while boys are encouraged to play rough, be competitive, crawl to the top of the monkey bars and jump off. We're teaching our boys to be brave, telling them to take all the space they need, then telling our girls to hide away themselves and their successes. And it isn't good enough, is it? Recently in Australia, Sydney Boys High, one of our most competitive academic boys' schools, released a video on International Women's Day, where the boys told the stories of women in their life, a way to support the feminist movement. It was applauded in global news outlets, but closer to home, women were upset. You may ask why. People weren't upset that a boys' school was supporting feminism. It was about why it had to be men, telling the voice to the stories of women to get the recognition. While hundreds and thousands of videos of girls calling out issues of sexism and assault exist, it took a man's voice to get people to listen. And that is the root of the issue, that a man literally speaking the words of a woman is more effective than a woman telling her own story. And the boys' response? Rather than focus on how women are being silenced by the media, it suddenly became more important that women had failed to acknowledge how much of an ally they truly were. But if your allegiance was conditional on being flattered, you weren't really an ally to begin with. So how do we solve this? While current solutions such as #mansplaining and #manspreading exist, these are call-out campaigns that focus on individuals and ignore the systemic root of the issue. So the first step, accept that no matter how educated you are, how vocal, how passionate about feminism and equality, man or woman, you have been socialized to see men as more dominant and more capable. And that awareness is the first step. When listening to and speaking with women, be aware of the space you're taking up, of your own instinct to discount their ideas. Because it's not about men choosing to be oppressive. It's the ideas imposed on us by society, the thoughts we didn't know we have. And it's only active consideration that will change this. The second step. Stop teaching our girls to say sorry before asking a question. Stop telling them to be perfect and instead tell them to be brave. Forget about sitting like a lady. In its place, don't tell them to stand like a man, but to stand like a person who is confident and capable. Because when we've put equality of gender, race and religion into our legislation, but still see fewer women in STEM and in boardrooms, we have to accept that trying to change a culture from the outside in simply isn't going to work. We have to start challenging our assumptions and our stereotypes. The third step, stop believing that femininity is inferior to masculinity. Stop acting as if boys playing with dolls is a crime. Stop justifying opinions that at their core have been informed by sexist bias. Don't use act like a girl, throw like a girl, or speak like a girl as an insult. It's time we stopped raising our children as boys and girls, but as human beings. Change starts in this room. I need all of you to change your own assumptions, because there is a silence where our women's voices should be. So stand up, shout out your answers, make yourself heard. It's time we filled the damn silence.